Kurt Signetti and the Indiana Hoosiers jumped 8 spots in this week's AP poll all the way to number 11, which is pretty good, but I think there's an argument they should be top 10.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, we got a lot to get to on today's show. We're sitting down with our man Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting expert, talking more about Indiana's dominant win over Illinois, what it means for recruiting, what it means moving forward, and why the Hoosiers can absolutely make it to the college football playoff. But we start today's show with this idea of the latest AP poll. And you and I have had several conversations about how the AP poll is a joke, how the people who vote for it are a joke, and half of them don't even watch all of the required games or the necessary games. Most of them are box score viewers. And luckily for Indiana, when they dominated Illinois, embarrassed Illinois, just absolutely spanked the Illini on national TV, A, most people were watching. But B, for those scoreboard or the box score viewers only, ain't nothing lying about a 63-10 win for Indiana over Illinois. You can look at that box score all you want, and ain't nothing going to lie on that thing because the score represented what happened on the field. And I think it was represented in the AP poll. Indiana jumps 8 spots in this week's AP poll from 19 all the way up to number 11. Illinois then falls all the way down to 23rd in the country, which I think Illinois is still a top 25 team. I do. I still think they deserve to be ranked in the top 25. I think they'll have plenty of chances to prove that they belong in the top 25. USC's at 21, Michigan's at 19. Of course, other Big Ten schools in there. Indiana, we're now at 11 in the top 25. Oregon 6, Penn State 3, and Ohio State at number 1. And while Indiana being 4-0 and the 11th ranked team in the country is awesome, I think the Hoosiers have an argument to be a top 10 team. After going back and doing research, I don't think anybody has a better win in college football than the Indiana Hoosiers. I think that win against Illinois on Saturday, the hype that it had, the attention that it had, and then the dominant fashion that it took place in, I think Indiana, as it stands through the first 4 weeks of the year, I think the Indiana Hoosiers own the best win in college football. Sure, the Ohio State win over Texas was nice. I think Florida State has an argument with their home win over what was a top 10 Alabama team at the time in the second game of the year? Was that the opener? Can't remember. Let me pull it back up. In the opener. That's right. In the opener in Tallahassee. I think that's a good win. Jury's still out on Texas. Jury is still out on Alabama. I think Oklahoma got a nice win this weekend over what was a top 25 Auburn team. Don't know if it's good enough to say that Oklahoma's the 7th best team in college football, but that's where the AP pollers vote them. The AP poll voters put them. Texas A&M has a great win on the road at Notre Dame. I think the Fighting Irish are going to bounce back. I think they're going to be a good football team, but problem is Fighting Irish don't have a ranked game left on their schedule. And the fact that Indiana is behind Texas, I just don't agree with. The Texas Longhorns are 3-1 so far this season. Would you like to know what they've done? They lost to Ohio State 14-7. They had to squeak out a win against San Jose State, squeak out a win against UTEP. They beat Sam Houston, and we know Arch Manning was fired up for that. That's it. That's what they've done. Tell me how a 3-1 football team with no good win on their schedule is ranked above an undefeated Indiana team who just proved everybody in the country wrong about who they were and how good they were. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Oh, I know why. Because they're box score viewers, because they're Arch Manning fans, because big time media tells them being AP poll voters, that Texas is a good football team because They have a big name. They have a big brand. They have a big name SEC coach and Steve Sarkisian. And Arch Manning is their quarterback. It's because Texas was the number 1 ranked team in the country to start the season. That's why they're still ranked in the top 10. That's why they're still ahead of your Indiana Hoosiers. If Indiana plays the way that they did on Saturday against Illinois, against anybody in the country, nobody beats them. Nobody beats that Indiana team if they play up to that level in any other game. It's going to be really hard to do. And we saw Indiana have big blowouts like that last year and obviously not be able to perform to that level in some of the biggest games when it mattered most, Ohio State and Notre Dame. But this game against Illinois was the closest thing we've had since, and you saw what the Hoosiers did. Tell me why Indiana is not a top 10 football team. And believe me, I understand. There's a lot of football to be played, folks. There's a lot of games to be played still. But from what we've seen through the first 4 weeks of the season, if you take everything into account, Indiana's one of the 10 best teams in college football. The betting odds say they have the 15th best odds to win the national title. I think that will grow. And the good thing is, Indiana still has plenty of chances to prove it. This week against Iowa won't be a ranked game, but I think the Hawkeyes are a pretty good team. You have a game on the road at number 6 Oregon for now. That could change if they win this weekend. They could be top 3 by the end of it. And then you still have a road game at Penn State, which they could be 3rd. They could move higher. They could go lower. But regardless, those 2 teams will still be in the top 10 when you play them. So you still have chances to prove it to those who still doubt Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers. But it is impossible if you are just a college football fan or watcher, or even if you're just a casual. You can't watch that game against Illinois on Saturday night and tell me that Indiana's not a top 10 team. What is going against the Hoosiers? Oh, they barely beat Old Dominion by 2 touchdowns, by the way. Yeah, it's an Old Dominion team that just got a coach fired in the P4. You destroyed Kennesaw State and you destroyed Indiana State. You did what you were supposed to do. So the fact that there's a team with a loss ahead of you in Texas is kind of ridiculous in my book. Other things I disagree with in this AP poll, Miami's not the 2nd best team in college football. I ain't buying that. All right, I ain't buying that. I'm not buying that Oklahoma's the 7th best team in college football. I'm not buying that Georgia Tech's the 16th best team in college football. Just not going to do it. USC, I think they're too low. Believe it or not, I think USC deserves to be higher than 21. Notre Dame being ranked at 1 and 2 is laughable. Laughable to me. And some other things in there that we could go into. But all that to say this, Indiana's still too low. But don't worry, they have chances to prove it. You split your 2 big games against Oregon and Penn State, and you win out of the rest, you're a top 10 team, you're in the college football playoff, and you got a chance to win a national title. Indiana's going to have to prove them all wrong again. Indiana's going to have to prove the doubters wrong every time they step on the field. And there will still be people that vote for the AP poll that won't watch them, won't research them, and won't vote for them. And unfortunately, it's the broken system that we're in. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we're going to sit down with our man Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting expert, also the host of the Portal podcast. We talk Indiana versus Illinois, why that game went the way it did, and the recruiting benefits from it. He joins us right after this here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home. Whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Some of the businesses around Bloomington that are a part of the Square network. How about Card Craze? Maybe Rusty Anchor. Hey, maybe you're a Fat Daddy's Barbecue fan. They're all a part of Square, and you can go support them. You should go support them right now. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. So you can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy that you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Square. Game Time, rather. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. And for those of you that were trying to go to Indiana, Illinois, you probably saw that firsthand, right? Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. So if you pull up Game Time, I did it the other day, and just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. So if you're heading out to Iowa, if you're an Indiana fan, you want to get in the door, check out Game Time. I promise you they're going to have the best deals, okay? So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today.
Into the Portal podcast, where we're doing a crossover in a special bonus edition with Locked On Hoosiers after Indiana absolutely blitzkrieged Illinois. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal podcast a part of your day each and every day, and Locked On Hoosiers as well. This is fun because now we're in the midst of the college football season, real games that matter, and Indiana spanking Illinois certainly did matter. It showed the world that the Hoosiers are for real. We're going to talk about their transfer portal additions, how Curt Cignetti made it clear that he knew what he was doing with the evaluations, and that's the same deal with his staff. Really dig into the numbers on Indiana's defense. That front line, they held Illinois to 2 yards rushing. Why is that? And overall, where should they rank and how do they fall in the college football playoff discussion? To help me figure that out, my guy, Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers. Jacob, I thought it would be a close game, Indiana, Illinois by 7 or less. It ended up being 53-ish or something. I wasn't very far off. That's one of the most ridiculous outcomes of a game I've ever seen in my life in any sport, ever.
Yeah. And look, that's what we talked about was nobody predicted that. Okay, nobody. I don't care. I had Indiana fans telling me that the Hoosiers would win by 10 or 15, maybe 17 or 21. And that was outlandish to even say that at the time. But to go out and win 63-10 and do it in the way that you did it and just ripping the soul right out of Illinois and just burying them by, I don't know, 5 minutes into the second quarter, that game was over, Brian. It was over. Indiana gets the punt block return for a touchdown. Illinois responds right back, and you're like, all right, here we go. We got ourselves a game. Indiana said not so fast. Score, and that thing was over. So Indiana came into that game with some frustration. Curt Cignetti came into that game with some juice, if you will, because nobody believed in Indiana. The Cinderella story couldn't happen again, but this ain't no Cinderella story. Indiana is a really dang good football team.
Let's talk about that from the perspective of the defensive line, because I pulled up Pro Football Focus, and brother, it's pretty glaring here.
Yeah.
You look at the defensive line, like Tyreek Tucker, he kind of, as you told me before the show, had a coming out party, 84.9 this year, run defense. Yep. You got Stephen Daly, 84.2. He's an edge defender. I mean, just down the list. Hardy's 81.6. You got Boykin that's 80.1. Fisher is maybe their best defensive player, but he's only graded at 76.9. But he's like 8th on the list or something. Like, Indiana stops the run, and they held Illinois, if I remember right, to 2 yards.
2. Yep, that's right.
They hung their hat on running the football. They punched him in the mouth, knocked him out. There wasn't round 2. They never got started. They just completely dismantled him. Were you surprised by that?
To that extent, yes. Again, I think that's kind of the takeaway here is I'm not surprised that Indiana won this football game. And I'm not surprised that they won it in dominating fashion or by double digits, but a 53-point win, holding an Illinois team to 2 yards rushing. Now, 7 sacks helped with that number, right? We know that quarterbacks being sacked in college goes against the team's rushing yards and the quarterback's rushing yards. And so that definitely helps. But you mentioned Tyreek Tucker had 2. of those sacks. And I believe he had 4 total tackles and 2 of those being the sacks. And so, yeah, it was surprising to see that you held it to that little yards, because knowing that's what Illinois wants to do. But I just think the game plan from Brian Haynes, Kurt Cignetti, and this entire Indiana staff was, we're going to pack the box. We're going to get after the running backs. And then when they do have to drop back to pass with Luke Altmaier, we're coming after him. And that's exactly what they did, and made his life hell. I mean, they really, really did, Brian. This was such a dominating performance in the trenches on both sides of the football for Indiana. That's the thing that sticks out to me, is the fact that Indiana's defensive line, yeah, you got 7 sacks, you held them to 2 rushing yards, and the secondary was lights out. But that offensive line looked really, really good too for the Hoosiers, only giving up 2 total sacks to a really talented Illinois defensive front, and protecting Fernando Mendoza and allowing Indiana to run the football. Mendoza was never really in trouble. He did whatever he wanted to do, and he picked apart a depleted Illinois secondary. It's the trenches that won this game, Brian, and what we've talked about so far this week, and even on Saturday, was the 2 games Indiana lost last year, Ohio State and Notre Dame. What was the problem? It was the trenches. It was in the big boys up front. Indiana doesn't have a problem with that anymore, and you saw it on Saturday against Illinois.
I think the only question is how much depth do they have, and can they stay healthy? But those are always the questions for every team if you're going to make a playoff run. We'll get to that in the second segment. But I also want to talk about just the obvious. I mean, Indiana's not throwing the ball well. Indiana is just absolutely destroying teams, and it obviously starts with Fernando Mendoza. Here are his numbers in general. Like, this is ridiculous. He's killing it. And if you look at the numbers, like, his offensive grade is 84.9. His passing grade is 86.6 in one game, 91.7, 86.1. Overall passing grade is 89.6. He's new to some of these guys. Yeah. He may not have ever met it, like all of them. Heck, all of them. He's going to get better is what's crazy. He was 21 at 23. Illinois is known for having a back seven that's very competitive. Now, I know they got some guys banged up. They're a little newer, but it was just no contest. Why am I to believe that Indiana won't just go out and torch just about everybody? And they got Iowa coming up. Tough place to play and all that stuff. But should I think that Indiana is going to really be slowed down by the Hawkeyes?
Not by the Hawkeyes, I don't think. And look, I know that their defensive line and their offensive line too, according to PFF, one of the best units in college football, and you would expect that to be the case at Iowa of all places. But I just don't think the Hawkeyes can keep up, right? Their offense is not built to come back when they get down by literally 1 score. And Indiana's not going to go away from what they like to do. They'll start by running the football, sure, with Kalen Black, Roman Hemby. The freshman Kobe Martin looked really good on Saturday after Lee Beebe Jr., a transfer running back from UAB, went down last week with a knee injury, and he's out for the year. But at the end of the day, Indiana wants to throw the football. You don't go get somebody like Fernando Mendoza out of the transfer portal, the guy from Cal who has been in big games before. And I tried to tell people that, and they didn't want to listen to me, Brian. He went on the road and beat an SEC team last year in Auburn. Not Vanderbilt, not Kentucky, not Mississippi State. He went and beat Auburn at Jordan-Hare and got a big win at the California Golden Bears program, okay? This guy is a baller, and that's why Indiana went to get him. And I think he's throwing to the best receiving group, or maybe one of the best receiving groups in all of the Big Ten, with Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper, EJ Williams has now emerged as well. And the only guy in the room that he's familiar with is Jonathan Brady, who did come in from Cal, who didn't even have a catch on Saturday. So, yeah, Indiana's going to sling it all over the place. And these teams on Indiana's schedule named Oregon and Penn State, they better be ready for it. And Fernando Mendoza is the Heisman favorite right now, according to our friends at FanDuel, and it's absolutely deserved.
I agree with that. And to that point, we're going to talk about why Indiana, speaking of deserved, I think they're a top 10 team. I want to dive into that with you. And if they beat Iowa, where do they rank? All that fun stuff. That is next here on this crossover, Locked on the Portal and Locked on Hoosiers.
Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat out all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every single model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. And you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
Thank you for hanging out with us here on a special bonus episode and crossover of Locked On Hoosiers and Locked On the Portal. I'm with Jacob Goins, host of Locked On Hoosiers. I'm Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst with the Portal Podcast. Jacob, we were just talking about Fernando Mendoza, so I want to bring back up those stats just so people can see it if you didn't already.
Sure.
It's pretty impressive, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
He is a really, really unique guy. But were you surprised? Again, he was 21 to 23 in the last game. 21 to 23, dude, is just absolutely insane. So what did you think about that? And were you surprised that it was that good against Illinois?
Yeah, I was. I mean, it's not surprising that he performed that well. It's the idea that him and the entire offense performed that well against a really, really good Illinois defense. And again, I want to make it clear and not overlook this fact that by halftime, Illinois was down 3 of their best DBs, right? They had a couple of injuries. Right. One of their DBs, the All-American, was out before the game even started. And then one of their captains in the secondary got thrown out on a targeting call that I didn't quite agree with, Brian. I'll just be 100% honest with you. I hate to see a guy, especially to his caliber, a captain, I mean, wore the patch and everything, on a depleted secondary already, get thrown out of a big game like that. But it is what it is, and Indiana took advantage. That's the big thing, is Indiana said, okay, we're going to let our dudes eat. We're going to go and let Elijah Surratt catch a couple of touchdown passes. We're going to make sure Omar Cooper knows that he has an advantage here, and even throwing it to guys like E.J. Williams as well. Indiana has a plethora of guys that they can get the football to, even some of the running backs out of the backfield as well. And Riley Nowakowski, a tight end, on probably the most beautiful tight end screen I've ever seen in my life. Indiana's not afraid to spread the football around, Brian, and they did it against a really, really good Illinois defense. And here's the good thing, and here's the impressive thing, and I hope that it remains this way. Fernando Mendoza is yet to turn the football over. He has no interceptions this year, Brian. He's thrown for nearly 1,000 yards, 975 to be exact, 14 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. If you can keep up anything remotely close to that throughout Big Ten play, yeah, Fernando Mendoza is going to be a Heisman front runner. He'll be sitting in New York and has a chance to bring home that touted trophy at the end of the season. But you're going to play a really good Iowa defense. You're going to play a really good Oregon defense, a really good Penn State defense. So you have to find a way to take 2 out of 3, I think, in those games if you're still wanting to make it to the college football playoff, and then take advantage of some bad teams. You have Michigan State and UCLA and Wisconsin and Purdue. Like, you got to beat those teams, and you can't slip up there. But Fernando Mendoza in this offense for Indiana, they're legit, and they have several more chances to prove so.
The stat that I find most interesting for Mendoza, and this is a great way that PFF does this, passes that are quote unquote medium range, 10 to 19 yards. Mm-hmm. You got to remember that's that area, partially at least, in the middle of the field, behind the backers, in front of the safeties, the danger zone. He does well with that. And he's also hitting at a rate of 68%. Plus, they've had 4 drops there. He should be far higher. So, like, this
one of those was a gimme touchdown in one of the non-conference games. So he could have another touchdown on his resume if one of those by Omar Cooper wasn't dropped. So
So anyway, to make a long story short, the guy's deadly accurate. That means you understand timing. That means you understand post-snap reads.
Yep.
The whole 9, and they're in sync. So I'll let Mendoza rest on this, but my goodness, he is a special, special player. And I'm just curious, you know what? If he's going to play at this level, how many defenses can really slow him down? Because it's not just throwing the ball. He understands what they're doing. He gets them in the right play. So to that, I ask you the following. Oregon and Penn State aside, is there any game that you think they should even remotely be not the strong favorite.
I mean, Iowa this weekend is fair. Just because, look, Kinnick Stadium, tough place to play. Their fans are wild, and Iowa's defense will be ready to go. But as I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to hammer this all week here on Locked On Hoosiers, Iowa cannot keep up with Indiana. If they're down by 7 points, it's over. Iowa's offense is not built to come back any sort of deficit. You've seen it already, and they've struggled to even beat the teams on their schedule so far. Brian, I mean, Iowa State, good team. They took care of business. They had to come back, believe it or not. I can't believe they did it, and beat Rutgers. Maybe they did before, but that was Rutgers. This is Indiana. You're talking just two major differences here. And so I look at the Iowa game this weekend as one of those, don't let it be a letdown, right? Don't overlook this team. Don't be too high on the emotions from Illinois. And if you can get that game, Michigan State at home should be an easy win. UCLA at home should be an easy win. I'm not worried about Maryland. I know they're 4-0, but they're going to get humbled really quickly, even though I think they got some dudes, but they're not it. Wisconsin, I'm sticking to my prediction that Luke Fickell will be fired before he makes that trip to Bloomington, and that's looking pretty good right now. And then Purdue, they're trying hard, but they ain't got the dudes to keep up with Indiana. So Iowa this weekend, outside of Oregon, Penn State, should be the only stressful game, but you know how college football works. You got to show up every Saturday, especially in the Big Ten or the SEC, because anybody can beat anybody. But I'm not worried about Curt Cignetti and Indiana overlooking anybody.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they're going to spank Iowa, though. I really do.
I do too.
I think it'll be like, it's not going to be the 60 burger, but Iowa's too consistent. They won't get beat over the top. That's what they're predicated on. Their defense coordinator is tremendous as a DB coach. I get that. But it'll be death by 1,000 cuts. Mm-hmm. It'll be 2nd down and 4 all day long. Short passing routes, hitting the zones. When I saw the same game you did with Mendoza last year, if you play zone against him, he'll smoke you. It's a cover 2 scheme as its base. NFL quarterbacks kill cover 2. And Indiana's a pretty good running team. They're not dominant, but they're pretty good at it. And they balance it so well, you don't know what's coming, about formationally and everything else. I think Iowa's up against it, and I think they will, they might have some plays, but I'm looking at it like 42-17 or something like that. I just think that Iowa will fold. I really do.
Yeah.
I saw them struggle with Rutgers. Rutgers quarterback's decent, but they don't have the offensive line Indiana does, and they do not have the playmakers in Indiana. I think it's going to be the worst game for Iowa in a long time. Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, bettors agree with you because the line opened at 6.5 according to FanDuel. And as of this recording, and this coming out on a Tuesday, it's already jumped 2 whole points to 8.5. I would not be surprised to see that as a double-digit favorite for the Hoosiers by the time this thing kicks off on Saturday at 3:30 Eastern. And I do. I think Indiana wins by double digits. And I think you should. I think Curt Cignetti will have his guys ready. The letdown game will not be there. And I think Indiana's going to continue to roll in this game and not let Iowa, of all people, trip you up on your way to a college football playoff.
Speaking of the playoff, if they do beat Iowa, let's just say I'm wrong and they only win by like 10 points.
Yeah.
Where would you kind of rank Indiana? Obviously, until they get to the Penn State game, they got other games, and the Oregon one's big. Are they a top 10 team if they win this game, in your opinion? In mine, it's yes. What are your thoughts?
I think they're a top 10 team right now. I think they should be top 10, and I talked about that earlier in this episode. I think they should be a top 10 team going into the Iowa game. But if you come out of it, then absolutely. And with the weekend that's coming up, right, with Georgia playing Alabama, Oregon playing Penn State, and some big I'm on the schedule, the Hoosiers have every chance to slide up in that top 10 spot from the AP poll voters. And all you got to do is beat Iowa. I'm not worried about it. The Hoosiers have to play well. They do. But I think that Indiana should be a top 10 team right now. I think they will be a top 10 team if you beat Iowa. And then, in my opinion, I think if you can split Oregon and Penn State, you will be in the college football playoff. There's a world where you can lose both of those and still make it, but I don't want to leave it up to them. I don't want to leave it up to fate that they put Indiana in again. So split those 2 games, and I think you're in regardless.
I could see it if they lost both games in like 7 points or less. That'd be possible because of both road games. but your point is valid, and everybody hates Indiana because they didn't think they were deserving last year, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Get it. But this is about this season. And I think Indiana, they kind of learned from last year. Even Aiden Fisher and those guys. I mean, they got some NFL guys, no doubt, but they learned. And they got better in the trenches. And they're going to need it against Penn State and Oregon because those two teams are not shy on the talent and they have more depth. But in a one-game scenario, can Indiana win one of those two? Absolutely. So
I think so.
Yeah, I absolutely do as well. Jacob, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Yeah, Locked On Hoosiers every single day. If you get your Portal podcast on YouTube, that's where Locked On Hoosiers can be found. Just search Locked On Hoosiers or any of your audio podcasting platforms. Man, the Hoosiers are hot, and so are we. We love to have you over at Locked On Hoosiers, and we're having a ton of fun with football. And, hey, basketball season's right around the corner, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can find the Portal podcast the same places you find Locked On Hoosiers, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and everywhere else you get your pods. We will see you again soon.